So welcome to video 2. We're going to be going into an introduction to purpose, giving a generalized understanding of what purpose is, while also talking about some common misconceptions and clearing some things up in that area. When it comes to some misconceptions, I'm going to go over 7 common misconceptions that I've seen, and hopefully this will bring a lot more clarity to exactly what purpose is by showing you what it is not. So misconception number 1, purpose is predetermined and fixed. So the way I would explain this is that it's a lot more nuanced than it being something fixed. There is a sort of understanding at the soul level that we've come here to learn specific lessons, and those lessons might be fixed, but the way they are experienced can be very much up to personal behavior. Some lessons might have been placed to be learned by a specific age or around a specific age. But if one is consciously engaged with the soul, consciously seeking out lessons, then that lesson might be sped up, and the process through which they go through those lessons might be a lot easier. For example, instead of you learning your lesson through suffering, you learn your lesson through actively engaging in a challenging situation, and that can be a way of maneuvering or of shaping your own destiny. It is more so 50-50, or better described as a co-creative process where the soul throws in the lessons that need to be learned, but the individual self, the ego self, can partake in those lessons in any way he or she so chooses. So that being, you might have a specific purpose, which might be to, for example, for me, I want to help people actualize their potential, but that can happen in so many different ways. It can be me by doing this video, or it can be through dance, or it can be through me going into philosophy. It can be seen in many different areas. So understanding that there is that flexibility within purpose will help to remove a lot of the weight from this idea of destiny, while also kind of making it more fun. Misconception number 2 is that purpose must be grandiose. And this is one of the biggest things that a lot of spiritual teachers try to move people away from. Because when you feel like you're connected to your purpose and you get a sense of grandiosity, it can be dangerous for those around you and for yourself too. A lot of negative things have happened in the name of purpose. The idea here is that the grandiosity can only be a negative thing if you are attached to your ego. Because the truth is that when you're tapped into purpose, there is a feeling of grandiosity. It is invigorating. It is a powerful spiritual force that one can tap into. But if the person doesn't have the necessary ego structures to withstand such a force and to maneuver it and manipulate it accordingly, or more so, better said, guide it accordingly, then the grandiosity can get to the person's head, can make the ego very huge, and it can just be very bad for the person, leading to a sense of even feeling like the Messiah or the savior of the universe, which is a very extreme example, but people have mentioned it. So what I will say is that purpose is grandiose, but it's only grandiose in the sense that it brings you more drive, it brings you meaning, it brings you fulfillment. The moment that that grandiosity starts to overtake the ego is when one must really be careful. So being constantly vigilant of how they're approaching their purpose. Is it an ego pursuit, or is it more so a transcendent pursuit? It's meant to be a transcendent pursuit. So when you experience it as a transcendent pursuit, it's most likely you approaching purpose from a detached perspective. So moving on to misconception number 3, purpose equals professional success. There's something like I sort of mentioned in part 1. Finding one's purpose does not necessarily mean career achievements. Purpose is more so about finding fulfillment. So you can find career success, but you'll find that success in a job that is not in alignment with your purpose. So this is when we were talking about how there can be people who make tons of money, who are rich, but they don't feel fulfilled. And that's because they're not acting from their purpose. They're not on their purpose. So hopefully that clarifies that. Misconception number 4 being that finding purpose is the final goal. People think that maybe once I find my purpose, I know what I need to do and it's over, like that's it. But it's not that easy. Purpose is a constantly evolving thing. It grows as you grow. It's a co-creative process. Finding your purpose is really just the beginning. Once I found my purpose, I've gotten deeper and deeper into layers of understanding what that means, of exploring that specific concept. So maybe might have started with me creating YouTube videos and trying to impact people at a large scale. But I've made mistakes, I've learned, I've adapted, and now I'm still on my purpose, but I'm doing it through a different format, providing more educational content, things that will help people at a specific place in their lives versus trying to help or trying to hit the mainstream. So just a reminder, finding your purpose is just the beginning. Purpose is always obvious. It seems like there's almost an expectation that purpose is supposed to be obvious. Like there's certain people in life that just get it and they just go with it and it was easy for them. And because it was easy for them and it's not easy for you, then maybe finding your purpose isn't really something for you. That's kind of the logic that a lot of people have. But in reality, finding your purpose is not that obvious. The reason being that understanding yourself is a fundamental step in finding your purpose. So there are lots of people who don't understand themselves, and that can be due to parental conditioning or societal conditioning. It really can be anything that disconnects them from themselves. Maybe some people are lucky and they find the thing that they're passionate about and they go into that and they find a purpose within that. But a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people at a young age might have had some things that they enjoyed, but they didn't get the opportunity to explore that further because parents wanting them to focus on school or whatever. It's not going to be obvious. It becomes obvious though once you understand yourself. And so really the goal here is first learning about oneself, learning about one's spirituality, psychology, emotionality, etc. And in doing so, one gets one step closer to finding a purpose. Misconception number 6, purpose and passion are the same. And that is not the truth. And I hear this all the time. People mentioning passion interchangeably with purpose. And I might have even done so right now. So just to clarify, purpose leads to passion, but not all passions lead to purpose. This is something that gets confused often because you can have a passion and it can bring you a lot of joy. But will it bring you fulfillment over the long run? Will it be something that encapsulates every single aspect of your life? Probably not. And this is where you often see people who have hobbies for the sake of hobbies, passions for the sake of passions. But to have a purpose means to make something out of your passions. It means connecting your passions to other aspects of your life. And purpose really does that. It's what brings meaning to your passions. Instead of it just being a pursuit for fun, it becomes a pursuit for self-discovery, for understanding oneself. That's the difference in approach. If you have a passion, the way to make it something that becomes a purpose is to question how this will bring you into your next step of evolution, your next step of progression. And then that will allow you to find your purpose. And it can be one of the gateways to your purpose, but you don't have to have a passion right now. You don't have to have something that you really feel called to. You can find your purpose through learning about yourself, and then you can explore some skills and tendencies that you have, and then that will lead you to discover some passions. I want to highlight that passion fuels purpose, but you don't need a lot of passion to find your purpose. All you need to do is have an understanding of yourself and follow your intuition, and that will drive your passion. And passion can be a part of the intuition, but we will go much deeper into that. But the thing I want to clarify is that sometimes passions can be fleeting. They can be in the moment, or maybe they're just meant to show you something. But they're not going to be lifelong things all the time. And something to differentiate between passion and purpose is that purpose is more long term, it's much more encapsulating, it's integrative, versus passions can be one dimensional, they can be temporary, and they don't really connect other aspects of life. And the last misconception is that the largest impact comes from broad public achievements. And so when it comes to purpose, one often thinks about impact. If I find my purpose, then it must be something huge, right? I have to be helping thousands or millions of people. And that kind of expectation is too big and actually comes from the wrong place. It comes from a misunderstanding of what purpose really is. Purpose can range from the very minor scale of just finding purpose within one's life for one's life versus finding purpose in one's life for many lives. And something I just want to make clear is that finding your purpose, understanding who you are, and building yourself in a way that can help you serve yourself, but also serve others at a high level. That's all that you need to do. That's all the impact you need to do. Whether it can just be a one-to-one interaction, knowing who you are, being authentic, and expressing yourself at the highest level is really you achieving your purpose. And you can become an example for people when you find yourself, when you are connected to your purpose. People seeing you living in your authenticity, living in your truth, moving forward without any barriers to your being. That is one of the most impactful things you can do in your life. So don't discount the power that you have in just you as an individual. Next, we will go into some great models that will help in understanding purpose. The first model is going to be coming from Japanese philosophy and is actually pretty popular. The Japanese model of Ikigai is what I'm talking about here. Ikigai translates to a reason to live, and it happens as an intersection of four main things: what you love, what you are good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. This can be super helpful for a lot of people as it presents a map of how you can piece through these things and eventually understand what your purpose is. And what I really liked about this model was the fact that it, by nature, is an integrative approach. It takes from different aspects of life, and the connecting point between all of those becomes your purpose. But the main issue that I see with this model is that there's no actual how-to. This is great as it gives you a philosophy, it gives you a map, but it doesn't tell you, because there's a lot of people who don't understand what it is they love to do. There's a lot of people who don't know what they are good at. There's a lot of people that don't know what they can even be paid for. And they might know what the world needs, but they don't know how they can meet those needs. And the reason being because they don't understand themselves. Knowing yourself allows you to know what it is that you love to do, allows you to figure out what it is you're good at. It allows you to even see what maybe people could pay you for. Knowing yourself is a huge aspect that is not being discussed in this model. That's something that I'm largely focusing on with this course. The next model I want to talk about is Viktor Frankl's Logotherapy. Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor who went through all the horrors of a concentration camp and came out as a survivor, and even used his story as a psychologist to create a different form of therapy that was also based on meaning. So logotherapy is based on the idea that having a purpose is so powerful that it can help people overcome extreme suffering. What Viktor Frankl would do was, instead of basing somebody's therapy on their past, what they've been through, and helping them dialogue through that, he focused on talking about their purpose. What are they looking for? What they find meaning in, and helping them focus on that instead. And he would have results where people would be able to heal based on that, rather than focusing on the past. And I think that Viktor Frankl's logotherapy is a fresh perspective on healing and also finding meaning, as it doesn't do the usual looking into your traumas approach that other psychological approaches have. He instead focuses on a future orientation and finding meaning in life's challenges, which has been super beneficial in my own life. And I think that it can contribute a lot to the narrative now because so many people are focused on trauma. There's a lot of discussion on past lives, traumatic experiences, etc. But what I find useful is to move with an objective and shape your life based on that objective instead of reminisce on the past and make that an identity. That's what I was hoping to create with this course, helping people, give them an objective and provide the resources for them to accomplish that objective and experience transformation through that. The next model is really more so a story. It is the story of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I want to say first off that this is one of the most impactful books of my life. I don't know what it is about the book, but when I first picked it up, I couldn't put it down. I read through the whole thing in one sitting. And all the while, my whole body had this visceral response to it. I was just vibrating and I could feel just an ecstatic feeling of just this is right. There's something that this book contains that was speaking to my soul. I knew that I had stumbled upon something super important. And while I was reading the book, it became clear, the messages, the universal truth that pursuing one's destiny is one of the most meaningful endeavors to a person's life. That truth was what really stuck with me. That we all have our personal legend and we're all on our journey to pursue that and find it and make that a priority in our life. That was the main thing that resonated with me. And it was a message from my soul to myself that that's what I was meant to do, to pursue my personal legend. And even the mentions of synchronicity and the universe aiding you on your path, that was also a huge part as it's a true thing. As you tune into your purpose, the universe comes in and sends you messages. It sends you ideas, inspirations, intuitions, synchronicities so that you can understand that you're going in the right path or you might not be going in the right path. And now I'm going to be talking about the model that I structured a lot of my course around. This model was presented by Ken Wilber. It's known as the AQAL model. All quadrants, all lines. And Ken Wilber's model is really in assimilation of all different kinds of experiences. He categorized them into four main things, being interior and exterior, and individual and collective. The individual and interior dimension is really the dimension that I focus on, mainly on my channel, which is exploring depth, understanding oneself through spirituality, through psychology, finding meaning in one's life, finding purpose. These themes are very common things when thinking about the interior individual perspective. And when it comes to purpose, really when we're putting it in the framework of this model, this is where we're talking about meaning. Quadrant 2 is the individual right-hand path, which is the individual exterior dimension. This is where we see the empirical benefits of having a purpose. The scientific studies that point to an increase in longevity when one finds a purpose. Also, even Viktor Frankl's Logotherapy is an example of this. And even my work with my clients being another example. The next dimension being the collective left-hand path, being the collective interior. And here we're really talking about the cultural and societal dimension of purpose. Here we talk about how shared purposes can shape cultural narratives and social movements. We talk about how collective actions and shared values can unite communities and can also even lead to historical movements that are all driven by a common sense of purpose. I really think about the social dancing community, how in the social dancing community, which I am a part of, just learning to be a better dancer is one of the purposes within the community. And what we see here is we see a whole culture being born where we have congresses, we have events, we have teachers, we have classes, we have a community, local events, this whole ecosystem that's created all based on this shared value of getting better as a dancer and as connecting also through dance. And quadrant 4 being the collective exterior. This is a dimension that I get really excited about, because when we think about purpose from this dimension, we can think about systems theory, complex systems theory. And when it comes to complex systems theory, I'm going to give a quick summary. Complex systems theory is seen in the universe everywhere, all around. It's really this process of seeing that there are various parts that are working together, that are in relationship to each other, and through their relationship dynamics, they create something called emergence, which is a byproduct, something that is not expected, something novel. So complex systems is really a theory around the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And we can see this in nature, where we see how, for example, a flock of birds, they can move in synchrony without running into each other and getting to their destination without any issues, while also not having any centralized control. So there's no one bird telling all the birds what they need to be doing. In fact, every single one of these birds are operating under a certain number of rules, which are very simple, very binary. The rules are, if you get too close to a bird, make sure to keep your distance. And if you get too far away from a bird, make sure to keep your distance. And just off having that simple rule, you see this dynamic of this seemingly complex system of birds flying together in a flock, but really being in a byproduct of just these simple rules being played out. And when I'm talking about complex systems from the perspective of purpose, I'm really deriving from this idea that we all are part of the system known as the universe, and we serve the universe in a specific way. And as human beings, we are all individual agents, and we operate under certain rules. Sometimes those rules can be on around society, but sometimes those rules can be based on the larger universe as a whole. And I've found that there are only two or three main rules through which I operate from and hope to contribute to society, which is the first one being on my purpose, the second one being authentic, and the third one being expressing myself creatively. If I can follow those three rules with my life, I know that I can impact the system at an exponential level, because through every small interaction within the individual agents, I create ripples, and this kind of can then be seen as the butterfly effect, for example. But in general, the idea here is that if we are truly a part of a complex system, the complex system requires that there is no centralized control, meaning that we aren't operating based on specific rules laid on us from society, but we are operating from a set of rules that are naturally given to us through an understanding of nature and the universe and our place as human beings. If we can live in that way, from that decentralized space, then it only happens that we will each have our own individual purpose, and that will be our function to the system. And so then if we are all connected to our unique purpose, then it will lead to an emergent phenomenon of us leaping in our evolution. And that's my vision for this. The long-term vision is, I hope that this course will help you get to know yourself so that you help others get to know themselves. And then once others get to know themselves, it spreads through the whole population. And then that leads us into the next step of our evolution, being a transcendent one. That's all I have for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.